what were you interested in college? What kind of degree did you end up getting out with?
Well, I was majoring in beer for a couple of years, so that worked out really well for me. And then I ended up with a master's in disasters, so that has really paid off a lot. And then it qualified me to be on your show.
Oh, thank God! Yeah. Well, I can relate.
I appreciate your question. But a degree doesn't validate what somebody says.
No,
so
no.
I have a degree, but I don't go by that.
Yeah, well, me too.
Yeah, right.
But
Egyptologists say, well, I've got this degree, so I'm going to declare an edict about what we think, but we're never going to demonstrate anything about the Great Pyramid in terms of how it was built. So I'm not trying to be cagey with you at all about my degree, but I'm just saying that I don't have a degree that validates my research, just like anybody else.
Oh, yeah. Well,
you get my drift?
The whole idea of surviving college or any kind of higher education is just the learning process that you go through, for sure.
Right.
And you basically get to the point where you realize how you need to learn the information you want to learn. And that brings me to the next question of...
let me just say this. In college,
Sure.
I learned that a lot of the things they were telling you were incorrect. So that makes me, I think that's a valuable piece of education.
I think that's indeed one of the benefits of higher education. You start realizing that your mind has been kind of like pigeonholed, in your youth. You've got to start thinking outside the box. You end up, having college professors and colleagues on campus that have total different ideas about life, and their experiences are totally different than yours. And that's quite a eye-opening experience for sure. I was a cougar. I went to Washington State University. Talk about a drinking campus, back in those days. I can relate to that. But I tell you what, I just loved it out there at Wazoo. Of course, you're stuck out in the middle of nowhere as far as, just being far away from civilization. So all the students really kind of bonded together, and there were all sorts of great, student organizations and things you could get involved with. And I really enjoyed those kinds of years. Now, at one point, you ended up being very serious about studying these Great Pyramids. How did you get started in that?
Well, like I say, I have a technical background, and I just like anybody, read a book from the library and watched a few TV documentaries about these pyramids and everything, and I thought, wow, especially the Great Pyramid is what my focus is about. That specific building over there in Egypt. I thought, wow, well, it's certainly there, but how is it made? How'd they build it? I've read books on how aircraft carriers were built and how the Panama Canal was built and how the Empire State Building was built. There's TV shows about how it's built, and it's very interesting. I don't know if you've ever watched that on the Educational Channel. Usually it's inside factories how they build everything from a pencil to an airplane.
Right.
But how something is built is, to me, an interesting subject.
Well, it sounds like you're even interested in taking apart the dishwasher part that didn't work to find out why it's not working. That's fascinating stuff.
So I did what everybody does. You just go down to the library and get a book by the expert with a degree, an Egyptologist, to find out how it was built. And they tell a story about a big ramp and people with strong back muscles and that are knuckle draggers that drag stones up a big ramp to make a big pyramid. And to me, I thought that's an explanation, and that the science of Egyptology gives. So all I did after that after reading a few books, I said, oh, well, all I want to do is just see the demonstrations of them moving, let's say, a 70-ton payload up a ramp, or moving, a stone, like a 70-ton stone, that's the weight of the largest stones, on or off of a barge, because the biggest stones came, upriver, about 400 miles away. And so I just wanted to see their scientific demonstrations that validate their hypothesis. And I found out something. I became educated about a fact that is quite interesting. And that fact is there are no demonstrations.
Interesting.
Egyptology has never moved a 70-ton payload 1 inch, the entire science, ever.
Let alone 400 miles, right?
Right. They've never moved a big, heavy stone on or off of a barge, even though they say barges were used, because many of the quarries are across the river. They've never made a casing stone that was on the Great Pyramid. Those are the finely cut outside stones that were on the outside that are many are gone now.
Right.
They weigh up to about 16 tons and are cut with extreme precision. Egyptologists say that working people using hand tools made those things all day long. But Egyptologists, being experts with a degree, they can't do it.
Yeah.
So that has an implication to me.
Yeah.
Okay. You can read a story about cows jumping over the moon. It's in literature and everything else, but there isn't any demonstrations of that, even though it's in literature, books, and everything. Just as Egyptologists do not provide demonstrations for the stories they tell. So that's interesting that a science doesn't engage in the scientific method.
Exactly. Matter of fact, you would think that some engineer, mathematician, or whatever, could actually come up with a model of that, if indeed it was a correct model of how it was built. Have you ever run across anybody's written explanation, mathematically or engineering-wise, that they've tried to do that or not?
Well, engineers and mathematicians are not Egyptologists. Those are different things. Okay.
Yeah.
Egyptologists have used models to demonstrate how it was done, and they provided a demonstration. But they've used diminutive-sized payloads, like 1.5 tons.
Oh. Yeah.
So, and that's kind of interesting. That's like me saying I can go out to the street and pick up a full-size car all by myself. I can just grab it and pick it up.
Yeah.
And I'm going to provide a demonstration and pick up a Hot Wheels.
Yeah, there you go.
If you want to demonstrate how a 70-ton payload is moved, a good demonstration would include a 70-ton payload. But Egyptologists don't do that. That's not part of their science.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now let's clarify too this 70-ton thing. Obviously, someone has calculated the size and weight of these larger blocks of the pyramid.
Oh, certainly.
How have they been able to calculate that?
Well, if 1 cubic foot of stone weighs, let's say, 100 pounds, they figure the volume of these stones that are accessible, the largest stones, they're the ceiling stones of the king's chamber, measure their size and volume, and then times that by the weight of the type of stone they are.
I see.
Those largest stones are granite, and then they're 70 tons, which is the weight of a railroad locomotive or an Abrams A1 battle tank.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
It is a good analogy.
I think it's probably pretty easy for people to recognize a large locomotive train.
Yeah.
And that's about the size of 70 tons. Wow.
Yes, it is.
Very interesting.
So you take the wheels off of a locomotive drag it through the sand, and up a ramp, and then you don't need people like me with alternative ideas. But Egyptology does not engage in the scientific method in that regard. So,
well, from what I have gathered, I'm sure you've done this study as well, is that there is some major, let's say, clandestine agendas going on with some of these Egyptologists that don't want to really get down to the bottom line of these things. For instance, isn't the pyramids, plural, aren't they much older than previously understood?
Well, there's a geologist, Dr. Robert Schoch, who I've met and we've talked in the past. He contends that the Sphinx was much older than Egyptologists contend that they were. His basis is on its geology of the Sphinx, the weathering and that type of thing, and he's an expert about that. The Sphinx is made out of rock, and Dr. Robert Schoch is a renowned geologist, and based on rock evidence, the Sphinx is much older than Egyptologists contend that it was. And Egyptologists contend that the Sphinx and the pyramids were built by the same culture, if you will.
Oh.
So that puts question on the age of the pyramids at the Giza Plateau. So, yes, the age of the pyramids is in scholarly debate, and not necessarily what Egyptologists tell you. So,
yeah. So what you're telling us then is that at least Dr. Schoch says that the Sphinx is older than the pyramids, maybe the Great Pyramid even.
No. What I'm saying is Dr. Robert Schoch says that the Sphinx is older, much older than what Egyptologists say it is.
Oh.
Based on its geology. And Egyptologists have said that the Sphinx and the pyramids were built around the same time based on their cultural explanation of those structures.
Right.
So everything about the Great Pyramid except its location is under scholarly debate right now.
Except its location. Very good. Yeah. And is it true, too, that some of the analysis that Dr. Schoch has done about the weathering of the Sphinx is maybe because of this water erosion rather than wind erosion? Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. He talks about water erosion and the area, the northern Africa, if you will, was much more of a savanna much earlier than the traditional date of the carving of the Sphinx. So, yes, the date of the construction of the pyramids is certainly under scholarly debate right now instead of just what Egyptologists say it was. So there's certainly a lot of different types of evidence to make different interpretations of that evidence, including some carbon dating and other things. So the pyramids and the Great Pyramid may have been built pre-dynastic times, if you will. So they may have been much older than the culture of ancient Egypt, possibly.
Ah, okay. So maybe what you're saying is that the pyramids, at least the Great Pyramid, could have been made and constructed well before the Sphinx, for instance? Or do you think the Sphinx was older than the pyramids?
Actually, the age of the Great Pyramid is certainly under scholarly debate, but it's not the focus of my research. So, but I think that the Great Pyramid has potential for being much older than 4,500 years, is what Egyptologists say. Possibly before the last catastrophe, if you will. I believe in the man's history has been punctuated by various catastrophes, a catastrophist, if you
Yeah.
will. You know, be it the biblical flood or the last asteroid